Welcome back and welcome to Norfolk Replies. Tonight, there's one story dominating. The Prime Minister triggering Article 50 and thus starting the 2-year countdown for us leaving the European Union.
A few minutes ago in Brussels, the United Kingdom's permanent representative to the EU handed a letter to the President of the European Council on my behalf, confirming the government's decision to invoke Article 50 of the Treaty on European Union. The Article 50 process is now underway, and in accordance with the wishes of the British people, the United Kingdom is leaving the European Union. This is an historic moment from which there can be no turning back. Britain is leaving the European Union. We are going to make our own decisions and our own laws. We are going to take control of the things that matter most to us. And we are going to take this opportunity to build a stronger, fairer Britain, a country that our children and grandchildren are proud to call home.
So that's how the PM announced all of this lunchtime. Some footage I'm sure we'll be seeing plenty of times over the next 2 years. So yes, we are now starting the metaphorical process of dividing up our DVD collection with the EU as we begin our political divorce. Now, it's a deeply complicated process, of course, and one that will take plenty of time. It might sound funny, but there are negotiations about the negotiations before the real negotiations even start. So we've asked Dr. Nick Wright, a politics expert from UCL, to explain what happens in a minute.
Once Theresa May formally triggers Article 50, a letter will be sent to the European Council President, Donald Tusk. He will then inform the other heads of state and government in the European Union of Britain's formal desire to withdraw. There will then be a discussion at an April European Council meeting of these heads of government to agree the mandate that the Commission will negotiate with the UK for its withdrawal. This will cover the divorce settlement, which will involve our financial liabilities, dealing with EU citizens in the UK and UK citizens in the EU, and potentially border issues between North and South Ireland. After that, we'll probably have some kind of negotiation over the negotiation in terms of what the modalities of that are, how that's going to play out, and then we will get into the substantive negotiations, probably late summer, early autumn, and that's when we'll see David Davis and co sitting down opposite Michel Barnier and starting to hammer out the details of the deal. So the first thing that will come will be that divorce settlement, what's the separation process actually going to involve, and then we go into the free trade agreement, the follow-on from the future relationship between the EU and the UK.
This is all the subject of our discussion programme this week on Mustard TV Tonight. Claire Preece is going to be joined by MEP David Campbell-Bannerman from the Conservatives, Joe Rust from Labour, Alan Finlayson from the UEA and Elia de la Inglesa from the Norwich Cares for EU group. They'll all be picking apart the events of today, but from more of a Norfolk perspective, what the repercussions really are for us here. But let's find out more about what you think. We've been speaking to shoppers out in Norwich to see how they feel on Brexit Day.
I think we'll do really well. I think we're a very strong country. We have got so many resources that we've handed over that we don't use. I think we should take them back.
I voted Brexit last time, and I think it's a very good idea. I haven't changed my mind.
I think the rising prices, everything seems to be getting more expensive, and also the loss of trade that the UK will get from leaving. So I think it's a bad place to be in.
I generally have worries about the direction this country is taking it anyway, to be fair. And I don't think we're going to be much better off without Brexit, because we have all their humanitarian laws at the moment.
I'm European. I'm not really a nationalistic person. I believe in open life and open government. I run a business, and my business has been deeply, badly affected by Brexit.
I work in the performing arts industry, and I believe that withdrawing from the European Union will endanger my ability to travel freely throughout Europe and ply my trade.
Since I'm a foreign student, I'm concerned about how that's going to affect me, because right now it's really uncertain my future as a student here, because I don't know if I'll be able to continue studying here.
The country will cope. You know, they painted a picture of gloom and doom, and it's quite the opposite.
I've got concerns that it was a misinformed campaign, so people voted to leave that probably wouldn't have because they were told lies.
So it seems we are still well and truly split then. Now, obviously the needs of our part of the country vary hugely from other parts. We've been speaking to Caroline Williams from the Norfolk Chamber of Commerce, who's been explaining some of what they'd like to see come out of the Brexit negotiations.
Well, I think there's 2 points as far as labour. It's actually EU nationals that are here on a full-time basis, which are employed throughout our businesses, giving the skills that maybe we don't have. The second one is the seasonal workers, both from agricultural, from the factory and for tourism. This part of the world needs those extra staff to come in because there aren't enough people there, and in fact the businesses will not be able to survive unless they actually bring them in. But some of the systems they're talking about are very, very bureaucratic, that actually as a small business it's going to be really difficult to achieve. The British Chamber of Commerce are already dealing with our ministers and civil servants, and they're making some really wrong assumptions. They're not businesses, they are excluded from the real world in some cases, and actually they need a business case there to actually say, yes, that's our idea, but actually this is what the real world needs to be. Otherwise what's going to happen is that we're going to have to spend a lot of time resorting things out.
Now, one group who are left feeling thoroughly in limbo are EU nationals living here in Norfolk at the moment. They don't have a guarantee as things stand about their right to remain here if they don't have permanent residency. I went to meet Laura. She's a sculptor who lives in Norwich. She was born in France but has lived here pretty much all of her adult life. She's married to a British man and had one of her 2 children in this country too. But she's worried about her future here and the direction the country's taking. I started by asking her how she felt the day after the Brexit vote.
I was just absolutely shocked and dismayed at how could such a huge, important thing could happen. I was very young when I arrived. I spent all my adult life in this country, so I'm very, very connected with UK. And also I met my husband 30 years ago. We have a huge deal, yes, of uncertainty still, because we don't know where we're going, and the paperwork is very complicated, and there has been so many false propaganda about this as well. So we all have, this is what's important here, is that us, when I say us, EU nationals living in the UK, have all different circumstances and different perspective, where we are all affected obviously by the result of the referendum and the prospect of Brexit, because we are still part of the EU. Supposedly, you know, Article 50 is going to be triggered, but what change will come out after that, we still don't know for sure. It will depend on the negotiation that Theresa May is prepared to engage with and guarantee, you know, or not, EU citizens' right living in the UK. Some of us are not shielded from deportation, as so-called, but it's not that's not what we are worried about. It's more about protecting our status, like I said, you know, how to live here legally, you know, because every time I come back to this country, I would be living here legally only for 3 months. But once I've passed those 3 months, my status will be living here unlawfully, you know. So this is what's completely crazy.
Well, that's one question still to be answered, but let's get some more of what you think before we go. Let's start with Ted. He says today's the day we start to put the great back into GB. Next up is Ingo. They say people have few regrets about voting for something that they will only become apparent in 2 to 10 years. Indeed, how could they know? Next, it's from Silver Machine Online. They say, it's a shame our brightest and best haven't got a clue what they're doing and are making it up as they go along on the back of a cigarette packet. And finally, from Monkey Nuts 3000, which I'm sure is their real name. Negotiations? What are they negotiating? Anything. Brexit means Brexit or something. We tell those other 27 nations what we want and they fall over themselves to give it to us. That's the plan. Nigel and Boris said so. Now I think we put them in charge of negotiations. What could go wrong? But that's all we've got time for today. Make sure you do join the debate on This Week on Mustard TV tonight and on our YouTube channel too. As ever, you can get in touch with your thoughts on Twitter. We are at Mustard TV and there's a thread running on our Facebook page too. So that's Norfolk's reply on Brexit Day, the day we began our split from the European Union. Have a very good night.